Hey guys, Jake here, back with our second to last installment of the MVP Flight series, or Flight Check series, sorry. If you haven't watched the previous videos, go ahead and check them out. The first video with the putters, I talk about why I'm doing this entire experiment, where I'm throwing all the MVP discs. Otherwise, there's also the mid-ranges and the fairways that have been done so far. Today, we're talking about control drivers, which is kind of a weird category that I don't truly believe in, but it's a nice way to split out the drivers into two different sections because there's so many of them. So for my own ease of classification, we're going with control drivers and calling them everything speed 9 through 11. And then we'll go 12 plus as being distance drivers in a later series, or a later video in this series. So today we have, in the control driver slot, 19 different discs. The way I'm going to go through these is kind of like I did with the fairways. I'm not going to try to group them into categories. I'm just going to throw them all side by side, starting kind of on the overstable side, working down to the understable side. And I'll do that a couple of times. This is a lot of throwing max power shots, essentially, over and over. So I think I'll start getting tired towards the end. I don't want to start seeing variations in the throwing due to that. So we'll just throw them a few times, starting out kind of flat just to see a baseline. Then I'll maybe throw them either on hyzer or anhyzer as the disc kind of dictates for the other shots. We're sitting about 360 feet away from a basket down here by that big tree. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the setup. We're going to go ahead and get into it now and start throwing some discs. All right, guys, so to start things off, we're going to go with the biggest, beefiest disc that we've got here, which I should point out before we get going, I have thrown maybe half of these discs before. So a lot of this is new to me, which should be fun for both of us. So this is a phase, an MVP phase. I've never thrown one of these before, but it's theoretically the most beefy 11 speed that they make. Go ahead and give her a rip and see what happens. I'm going to swing it out pretty far to the right just because it should come back a lot. So oh yeah, that's definitely got some beef to it. It didn't fade as quickly as I thought it would. I expected that to be right out of the hand trying to get to the ground. It actually kind of flew a little bit before it dumped out, but it definitely dumped at the end. Interesting. All right. Next up, stepping down a little bit, I believe this is a 9-speed. This is the Motion. Should also be extremely beefy, just a little bit slower. So I do throw a Fireball normally, which is similar in speed and numbers. So I'm assuming it'll be very similar to that. Like a very overstable Firebird for those who don't throw a lot of MVP. Nice overstable shot. Yeah, again, maybe not as overstable as I expected it to be, but definitely overstable. Next up, we're going to throw the Fireball, a disc that I throw quite a bit. This one I do know is very, very beefy and probably very similar to that Motion did. Haven't thrown this one in a while, so we'll see. It's fairly new still. Yeah, very similar. And these discs are never getting anywhere near that 360-foot mark for me, just so we're clear. It just seemed like a good distance for the long drives. Right, so the Flare. This disc I have thrown, I had a Cosmic Neutron one in the past, and it, to date, is the most overstable disc I've ever thrown in my life. I'll be interested to see if this Neutron one flies the same way. Yeah, it's the closest thing to a tilt that I've ever thrown, so we'll see what happens with the Flare. Yeah, I would say that was probably a little more overstable than the Motion and the Fireball. And it definitely cut at the end a lot steeper even than the phase, I feel like. But yeah, we'll see what happens when we throw those guys again. But we're going to move down into some slightly less super beefy stuff. We'll start here, the 11 speeds. We're going to go with the Defy. The Defy, I believe, is supposed to be pretty similar to a Photon, which is a disc that I do throw. I have never thrown this one, though. So we'll see what the Defy does. I know Simon liked these for like flip-up distance drives or something early on, which just boggles my mind. But we'll see. I don't think I'll be flipping this at all. Wow, that is surprisingly straight. Good little finish at the end. It is actually very similar to a premium heavyweight Photon. While we're at it, I'll throw the Photon. This one is brand new, never been thrown. I expect it'll fly very similar to that Defy. Yeah, very, very similar. Felt a touch glidier, but that could have been just a wind bounce or something too. We're going to kind of stick in that 11-speed category since these are all kind of talked about together. I'm going to go with the Zenith next, which is supposedly a bit less overstable than both of those. It's a James Conrad driver. So I've thrown one of these before, but like twice. So I'm not super familiar with it. This one's brand new. We'll see what happens. Oh yeah, just a touch of turn on it. Man, that really goes. Through the tree, parked it. That's a nice flying disc. So normally I throw a fission Photon, which is less overstable than that Photon we just saw, because I also throw them in lighter weights. That Zenith flies pretty much identical to those fission Photons. So if I wanted a heavier weight premium disc that's a little bit cheaper, I could probably switch to those and be pretty happy. That was cool. I like it. Last up, in the 11-speed sort of straightish range here, is the Trace. This Trace, I've had a few in the past. Didn't throw them very long. I just didn't click with them for some reason. But it's supposed to be a bit more understable than probably all of those. The Defy, the Photon, and the Zenith. I think this is supposed to be the least overstable of those three. So this one's brand new. We'll see what happens. Not much of a turn on it. Actually felt like the Zenith was more understable, at least at the high speed end of the flight. It had a nice gentle fade though, so I could see it pushing a lot longer before coming out maybe. Not bad. A much cheaper version of, you know, the Photon or the Defy probably, if you're looking for something, you know, a little more in your price range. Very nice. So I'm excited to throw those guys again. I should also note that there's really no wind today. It's pretty much calm. You should be able to see it on these flags. Now, of course, we're getting a little bit of breeze, but it was like dead calm. All right, let's step down a little bit to the 9 speeds here. I'm pretty sure that MVP only has a 9 and 11. I don't think there's any 10 speeds. So this 9 speed is the Wrath. This is the Axiom equivalent to the Tesla. So these next two, the next will be the Tesla. These should fly pretty similarly. So we'll throw them side by side, see what happens. Starting first with the Wrath. I don't know why, but I get the Wrath and the Defy confused in my head constantly, so I always have to look. All right, Wrath. Straight with a predictable fade. Not bad. Didn't really turn at all. And now we've got ourselves the Tesla. I expect a similar kind of flight. My experience with the Tesla, I used to throw it a lot, and it's just a very straight disc with a super heavy dump at the very end. So yeah, we'll see if it's still that flight for me now. No flip at all. That one was on a little touch of hyzer. But yeah, I think if I'd gotten that out flat, it would have been a very similar flight to the Wrath. So pretty good. All right, now we're going to start touching some more understable stuff, I guess. We'll start with the Wave. The Wave is a super popular disc from MVP. I threw it for a while there in the fission plastic. I really enjoyed it. Before that, I tried it in other plastics, and it was way too flippy for me. So we'll see what this one is. This is a newer run, brand new though. The Wave. Oh yeah, she's turning. It is panning out though, and did get to flat. Really moved right. Pretty understable. Next is the Vanish. The Vanish should be the Axiom equivalent to the Wave. Very similar flights theoretically, so we'll see what happens here. It was not the best pull through. I kind of caught my chest on it, but it did feel a lot more stable than the Wave. Kind of interesting. We'll see when we throw those again if they're a little bit more similar or if the Vanish is more overstable. All right, stepping down into some 9 speeds here. And go with the Inertia. Never thrown this one. Scratch that. Yeah, no, I've never thrown it. I got one of the glow ones, I think, but I sold it before I threw it. So anyway, my first time throwing an Inertia here. Should be a 9.5 -2.2, just for some reference here. Hoping it'll turn over and come back a bit. We got the turnover. A little bit more stability than the Wave, it felt like. Yeah, I'd maybe have called that a -1.1, but yeah, very nice. Next up will be the Insanity. Basically the same numbers. It supposedly has a little more fade. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Holy smokes. That's a roller. Quite a deal more understable than the Inertia. Huh. And now the Lift from Streamline. This is the same numbers as the Insanity. See how this guy comes out. Well, that's a nice, gentle turn and fade. Yeah, that feels a lot more like the numbers. Yeah, that Insanity really flipped a lot more than those two. So, and I've got a good amount of experience with Insanities, and there has been a lot of variation in the runs over the years. That one I would say is one of the more flippy ones. But that happens sometimes. You get a test one and it's just not what you're used to. But yeah, now we're into the very, very understable stuff. We'll start at the 11 speed with a Jet. I'm a big fan of the Jet. I throw both this and the Photon plastic, which I can tell you now are very different discs. But we're going to throw the Neutron one today. I don't remember if it's a -3 or I think it's a -3 turn. But I expect this one to turn quite a bit. Sure enough, there it goes. Touch more understable than the Wave, I would say. All right, and sticking in the 11 speed, we're going to go with the Orbital, which should be even more understable than the Jet. I have not thrown this one before, I don't think. So, see what happens. Oh yeah, that's going to roll, I bet. Yeah, very understable. That'd be a really good distance driver if you're still working on getting some distance. If you're like maxing out like probably like that 350 mark, it's probably a good S-line curve kind of disc, or if you're looking for something for tailwinds. All right, 2 discs left. These are now 9 speeds. So we got the Virus. This one, I've thrown one of these once, I think. I'm pretty sure it was fairly flippy. It's supposed to be a negative 3.5, so it should be very flippy. I know Conrad throws these things on rollers, so gotta be pretty decently flippy then. It's understable, but not as much as I'd have thought. It really has a similar flight to the Wave. Huh. All right, and last is the Impulse, another very flippy disc, supposedly. I have never thrown one of these. We'll see what happens with this guy. Oh yeah, good and flippy. I even think that came out on a touch of hyzer. All the way up and over. All right, so that's all 19. I'm gonna go pick those up, bring them back, and we'll throw them again and see if they stay about the same. All right, guys, ready to throw round 2 here. We're starting things off again with the phase. This is the phase, right? Yes, the phase. That's what I get for getting lab seconds and misprints. I can't tell what anything is. Okay. I think I'm going to throw this one on a touch of Anheuser just to see how hard it'll try to fight out and flex back. I'm probably just going to throw it sort of straight at the basket on Annie. Yeah, that sucker came all the way out to flat and hit the ground with enough hyzer to keep skipping forward. That's an overstable disc. We'll do the Fireball next. I'll do something similar. I'm not going to throw it as low this time because I don't know if these will flex out quite that fast. I think they'll just sort of flatten out and then dig into the grass if I do that. So I'll throw them a little higher, but similar thing, just going to throw them on a flex, see what happens. Whoa, baby, too high. Certainly flexed out and is going left. Try the same thing with the motion. See if I can get a little bit lower. Yeah, that motion had sort of a slower pan than I expected, but definitely came all the way back. Good overstable disc. I think all of these like super overstable ones, you could use any one of them. They're all going to fly basically the same. Flare here. Didn't seem quite as beefy as the one I had in the past, but still very good and overstable. Try the same thing, throw a flex here. That definitely came out. All right, so maybe it is more overstable. Yeah, like I said, you could use any one of those. I don't think they're any better or different than any other super overstable driver I've ever thrown, but I also don't have the arm to probably see the difference between those, so need somebody with a bit more beef like a Simon to really see the minute differences between those. But for sort of that intermediate player like me, it's very beefy and it flies, what, maybe 300 feet at best for me. So, all right, moving on to some more throwable stuff, I think. Non-utility discs, I guess. The Defy. I liked this one last time. It wasn't as overstable as I expected. Very similar to a Photon, so try it again. I'm going to try to throw this one on like a baby flex to try to get a little bit more distance out of it, since it didn't really seem to turn. So do that a little high, but yeah, it's just got a nice, slow sort of pan out and fade, but very consistent. I bet you can throw that pretty reliably into a headwind, which is the same thing I think of when I throw my Photons. So do the same thing with the Photon. Yep, flexed out nicely. I don't think I would ever use those in premium plastic for my distance drivers, just because they're just so much more overstable. But if you ever want to try the fission ones, they're money. We'll go Trace next. Put the Trace next in line because it was a bit more overstable, I felt, last time. And we'll do the same thing with this. Give it a tiny bit of ante. It says it should turn, but you know, so should a Photon. So yeah, very nice. Right into the bucket. I really couldn't tell you the difference between those three from those throws. Be interested to take them all out into a headwind where I can get them up a little bit faster speed and see if that turn really shows up, or as they beat in, especially like the Streamline Trace, I wonder if it would start to turn more just because it doesn't have the overmold, which is maybe a little bit stiffer, different plastic that would break down a little bit slower. I don't know. Be a fun experiment. All right, and the Zenith. Try this guy. This one I'm going to throw flat because it had a little bit of turn last time. It claims to have, I think, the least of turn of the 4 of those discs, but it seemed to actually have decent turn in my opinion. Not as much turn that time, but it also wasn't as good of a rip. Very straight overall. I really like that. If I don't want fission, I'll just throw those instead of photons. Next, we got the Tesla. This one seemed a little more overstable last time. I'm going to throw it on another slight flex here. Overstable, reliable. It's like a shorter Photon or shorter Trace or Defy. The Wrath. This one felt a little straighter last time. I might just throw this guy flat. Yeah, it doesn't really turn, but really, right out of the bucket, really stays straight a long time. I like that. All right, the Lift. The Lift last time felt like it was a little more overstable than I expected, so I'll throw this guy flat and hard again, and we'll see how much it turns. Man, that is a money disc. That thing bombed way behind the tree back there. Yeah, very slight turn on that guy and just a nice little fade at the end. I'd call it like a -1-2 for me. I like it. So we'll go with the Inertia then after that, which was another fairly similar flight, maybe a touch more understable it felt like. We'll see. Just realize this is proton. It looks like neutron, but it is proton. It's just a very sort of opaque proton. Right in front of the tree. That one definitely felt a little bit more understable. I also threw a little higher and wider. But yeah, a little more squirrely, I guess. Let's do the Vanish. The Vanish was a bit more overstable, I think, than I expected last time. So especially for a -3, that's ridiculous. I'm going to throw it hard and flat again and see if it turns like it should. Because this should be essentially a wave. So. Man, you could call that's like the exact same flight as that Lift. Again, like a -1-2 maybe. That is not a -3. That's actually off topic, but the Jet in Proton, that's how a Jet flies in Proton. Way more overstable maneuvers. Okay. So the wave next. The wave was good and flippy last time, so I'm going to put this guy on a baby hyzer. All the way up and moving right still, come back out. Yeah, good distance. It's definitely not as flippy as the first waves I've thrown, but maybe not as overstable as the more recent fission ones, somewhere in the middle. I like it. It's maybe a hair more understable than I'd like. I'd much rather throw that Vanish or the Lift for a sort of understable disc. And I don't think it's quite as understable as I'd like for something that's super understable. So it's, I don't know, it's in that awkward spot for me. Let's throw the Virus next. This one seemed a little bit straighter than I expected last time too, but throw it on maybe a tiny bit of hyzer. Up and all the way over. All right, so it's definitely understable. I either misremembered how that flew last time, or it's getting was a lot less stable that time around. All right, the Insanity. This thing was super understable last time, which I did not expect. This would have been like a -3. I'm gonna throw it on a good amount of hyzer, see if it can get to stand up and go straight. Stood up and still turned down a tiniest bit. Yeah, that'd be a great hyzer flip through the woods disc to get max distance on a really straight line. That is very understable. Probably the most understable of the discs I think so far. I don't know. The Impulse, let's see. This one I felt like this is pretty understable too. We'll see how that compares. Again, this one I'm gonna throw on a decent amount of hyzer too. Okay, yeah, that one's maybe a bit more understable. Still turned into a cut roller. So yeah, we'll say the Impulse is more understable than the Insanity for sure. But the Insanity is very understable, at least that Photon one that I have. All right, let's throw the Jet next. This one actually surprised me a little bit with how overstable it flew. I expect these to be way more understable, but it was still pretty understable. Let's throw this one on a good hyzer. All the way up and over, but it's going to pan out before it cuts. Yeah. Nice, super understable disc. I actually really like throwing those really soft, like standstill for low ceilings and stuff, because they'll stay so straight for so long. You don't throw them hard. All right, Orbital should be the most understable 11 speed. Throw this one on a steep hyzer. All the way up and over and panning out. Yeah, very understable, as advertised. Go get them and throw them again. All right, guys. Last round of backhands from back here. I don't like it. We're starting to get a tiny bit of a headwind here. Maybe it'll stay with us. We're going to start things off with the phase again. Last time we threw them on any to watch them flex out. This time I'm just going to throw them flat again, just so I can get the best rip on them that I can. Yeah, we'll just see what happens into this little bit of headwind. Woo-wee! That came out on a little bit of hyzer, but man, that thing fought to the ground fast. Flare, which I feel like has been the most, well, it might be tied with the phase, but it's definitely been the most overstable 9-speed, I think, of the grouping. Now we've lost our headwind. Oh well. Yeah, I can tell I'm throwing these a lot lower and flatter / maybe a touch on hyzer now. Might be getting tired. All right, Fireball. Same thing. Low and flat. Ooh. That one did not fight out as hard as the last two, so it's definitely less overstable than the Flare. Motion. I don't remember the name of this guy. The Motion. A little bit better rip. A little bit beefier. I feel like the Fireball might be the least overstable of that group. All right. The Photon, it's been fairly beefy so far, which I'd expect. The -1 turn always gets me. I never would consider a Photon to have turn like that, but I guess it's probably not my arm speed class they're aiming at. So we're going to throw this one hard and flat again. That was a little high, but you can definitely see it's got that stability. The Defy, correct? Yes, the Defy, same thing. Hopefully a little lower than the Photon there. That's a little bit better. Yeah, no flip up at all. Just holds the line most of the flight and then just consistent fade at the end. We'll go down to the 9 speeds and grab the Wrath. Man, I'm getting them right. This is great. The Wrath. Which honestly, I feel like the Wrath and the Defy and the Tesla and the Photon, like they're all very similar flights. Just whether you like the 9 speed or the 11 speed feel. Oh, that's a little low. Tesla next. Now we got that little bit of headwind back. Didn't stand up with the headwind, just really held up to it. Which is what I really liked when I used to throw it. I'd use it for headwind shots because I knew it would go dead straight and dump no matter what. It's just with a headwind, it just takes a lot longer before it dumps. Just stay straight though. All right, the Trace. See if I can get this guy to turn at all. This little bit of headwind. Not really. Pretty straight. Honestly, very similar to the Photon and the Wrath and the Defy and all of those. Zenith. Now we've lost our headwind. Throw it hard and flat. See if it turns like it did the first time. Oh yeah, nice turn. A lot of turn actually. Wow. It almost flips more than I'd like. Oh, maybe it was that little bit of headwind starting to come in. The Vanish, which honestly flew probably more overstable than that Zenith, has been probably the furthest flying one so far. Yeah, it's just barely any turn out of that thing. It stays so straight. It's a park job. I love that disc. I might be a Vanish guy. Who knew? The Lift, which I've also been really liking, flies almost the same as the Vanish, but this one's the 9 speed. We lost our wind. Oh, that one came out on hyzer and a little bit high. Yeah, not great. Not a great throw. Really like that disc though. I could easily see myself bagging that one as well. The Inertia, a little bit more understable. Creeping off to the right. Bang. Right under the bucket. That might be on the pole. The Wave, some very flippy. Throw it on a hyzer here. Up to flat. Into the tree. Oh, off the top of the basket. Nice. So yeah, give it enough hyzer, and that one flies up, or stands up and flies pretty straight. Very nice. The Virus. was pretty unstable last time. Again, we're going to throw it on some good hyzer here. Ooh, a little low. With that turning over, it's going to hit and burn. Yeah. Too bad. That was actually looking pretty good if I'd have gotten a little bit higher. We'll do the Insanity. Again, lots of hyzer. It's been very flippy. Almost up to flat. Not quite. Big hyzer flip to hyzer, I guess. Go with the Jet. Good amount of hyzer. Up to flat and over a little bit. Man, just keeps holding that out. Oh, caught the tree. That was going to have good distance. All right, the last two are the super flippy. Orbital and Impulse. We'll go with the Impulse first. I'm going to throw it on a good amount of hyzer, and I'm going to throw it kind of high, actually. See if it'll offset some of the understability a bit. Up and over, and now stalling out. Probably going to drop right in front of the tree. Yeah, it's just a really understable 9-speed. It reminds me a little bit of like the Signal. Great if you have not a lot of arm speed. That's probably a great understable driver for you. And the Orbital, which didn't seem quite as understable, I'm still going to throw a little higher and on a good hyzer. There we go. Pushing right a little bit and drop right by the basket there. Not bad. Yeah, so I'm going to go grab those. We're going to try some forehands. Try is the keyword. So I'll catch you there. All right, guys. We're going to try to throw some forehands here. We're going to start again at the overstable side of things. So we've got a phase to kick things off. Feels good in the hand. Most overstable discs really seem to feel nice in the hand just with the flat top, I think. So that's not surprising. But I'm going to throw this guy on a bit of Annie because I don't think it'll get anywhere. This is, oh, by the way, we're at about 300 feet. I don't think I'm going to get anywhere near that with probably any of these. But we'll see. We'll see. It's be a big chop forehand. Wow, that thing fights out hard. All right, next up we'll do the Flare, the other stupidly overstable one. Same thing, big old chop forehand. God, that thing comes off fast. That one might be more overstable. All right, the motion. Hoping this one will hold a little bit longer here. Ooh, that one came out with not as much Annie. Did hold a little bit longer though. And the Fireball. Honestly, I probably throw this thing more forehand than backhand, so you'd think I'd be used to it. This one should be hopefully the closest. It didn't hold super long, but there you go. All of those, super overstable, forehand, backhand, take a pick. The Flare, I think if you had to pick one, seems to be the most overstable, followed closely by the Phase, then probably the Motion and the Fireball, and they're pretty close. Let's try, let's see, next, these two are pretty close. Do the Photon and the Defy. One day I'll figure it out. Do Defy first. I'm going to throw these ones on a touch of Annie. Almost to the tree. Still managed to flex out hard though, so they got their stability. Photon, same line. That one felt a lot better, but similar result. Again, those two, you like colored rims, you not like colored rims, take your pick. In a similar fashion, we're going to do the Wrath and the Tesla here. Start with the Wrath. That one held a lot longer than the Photon and the Defy. Maybe there is a little bit of difference here, even in the, the 11 to 9 speed. See if the Tesla holds straighter longer too. Not the best release, a little bit of flutter. But yeah, I think they do hold a little bit straighter longer, which makes sense. The slower speed ones should be a little bit more stable and a little less overstable. So, but between those two, very similar. Again, pick, do you like colored rims or not? All right, let's go to the Trace and the Zenith here. The Trace was honestly basically identical to the Photon and the Defy, so I'd throw it on the same line and expect roughly the same result. Maybe didn't fight out quite as hard, but I might have also thrown that one a little lower. Probably not the most fair comparison. The Zenith, this one I'm going to throw flat. Well, maybe, yeah. We'll try it flat and see, because it's been turning over backhand. So forehand, I'll probably really turn it. Unless I get a super clean release, which is pretty much never happening. Wow, no turn really. That feels really good forehand. That came out and just dead straight. Really like the Zenith so far. That's flies exactly like my Fission Photons. I really, really like that. Go with the Lift. See if this one turns at all. Supposedly understable, so far today it's been pretty straight. There's that little bit of turn. Didn't give it enough height for it to come out. It forehands nicely though. I really like that disc. The Vanish, probably the most impressive for me today. Really liking. It doesn't feel quite as good for forehand in the hand. It's almost got like, it's not really domey, but because of the way the wing is, it doesn't fit quite as nicely as the overstable discs do. I feel like so far that Zenith has felt the best and flown the best. But we'll see. This one, I think I'm still going to throw it mostly flat. Maybe a touch of hyzer. Woo, baby. Look at that thing go. That might be the longest forehand I've ever thrown. That easily passed the basket. Man, I might be a Vanish guy. All right, Inertia. Get this guy going. We'll put this guy on a touch of hyzer. See if I can get to flip up to flat. Up and a little bit over. You gonna drop right on the basket? Oh, no, just about at the basket though. Good distance. I like it. I throw the Wave next. This will probably need a significant hyzer. We'll see if I can kind of throw it to the right and have it stand up and move a little bit left, probably. Oh, wow, it didn't flip as much as I thought. It came up to flat. I also kind of threw it up in the air. Came up to flat, didn't quite get the turnover I was expecting. It's not as understable as I was thinking, at least on forehand. All right, Virus. Similar line, maybe not quite so much hyzer. Not enough hyzer. Good understable flight though for a forehand. I don't tend to throw a lot of those, but I could see it. Insanity, this one's super understable. I am going to throw it with more wrist flick and less like force to try to just sort of float it there, and a decent amount of hyzer. Didn't flip over much either. Again, threw it high, ended up in the tree. But it came up to flat and just sort of stayed straight. Try the same thing with the Jet, maybe a little lower. Just again, mostly wrist flick and trying to avoid pushing it too hard. Just don't want to have it flip over because of a bad release. Wow, that was a lot of hyzer. Terrible throw, but I really held it a lot more than I expected. Didn't even get up to flat or anything. Again, I didn't throw it very hard, but interesting. This is why I'm not a forehand guy. All right, the Impulse. I don't even know. I'm just going to throw a decent amount of hyzer. Try to keep it sort of low. See what happens. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. I don't know if that was a disc, but that was probably the best forehand I've thrown in a long time. I really like that feel. Did not expect it. The Orbital, just gotta go for the same kind of thing, I guess. Oh, too much hyzer again, just like the Jet. I think with the wider rim drivers, I have trouble getting the height right. But being as how I don't ever practice forehands, that makes a lot of sense. I tend to use them for mids and approaches and things more often. So, but some really nice flights out of those. Almost all of them were a little more overstable, it felt like, than I expected for my forehand. So I don't know if my forehand's really clean today or if they just hold up the torque a lot better because they're drivers. But yeah, that's the forehands. We'll maybe go grab those and do one more thing before we get out of here. All right, guys, last thing we're gonna do is work some lines here. I've got us probably, I don't know, a little over 300 feet out from this basket. Not super far for a control driver, obviously, but I want to try shaping some lines with these things. So we've got some, there's the slow and straight. You can kind of work left and right through these trees, potentially a big hyzer along the right or a big flexor on the left. A few different lines to work with. So we're just going to disc by disc throw through these and kind of try whatever comes to mind first. So we'll start things off with the phase. To be perfectly honest, I don't really have a shot that makes sense in my mind for a phase on this hole. Probably if I had the power, I'd say big hyzer around the right, but I just don't think I can get it pushed far enough and come back. So I think I'm going to try to sort of stay up the middle, but I think I'm going to throw it on a low driving flex because I threw one of those earlier and it seemed to really come out fast and get back left. So we're going to try it. Low driving flex through the middle. Oh, got the tree, but yeah, I think I started that a little bit further left or a little lower. That might have been decent. I'm gonna try a similar line with the flare here. See if I can get this one a little bit lower this time. Woo, that comes out fast. Oof. Yeah, not great. Early and left. Technically a putt, but a very long circle 2 putt. Try the motion. I think I can throw the motion on the same with maybe a little less Annie, and I think it'll pan long enough to go back right. So this one might actually work for the shot I've been envisioning. There we go. Come out. Yeah, short and left of the basket, but an edge of circle putt probably. Fireball, I'm gonna try the same thing. This one didn't seem as glidey as the motion, but it also didn't fight out quite as hard, I don't think, so maybe those will balance each other out. Do that a little high and a little bit more right. And I caught the tree. Oh well. So that's the flex line. All right, so we'll try the Photon first here. This one I'm gonna try throwing a low driving flex on forehand underneath these trees. It's probably not the highest probability shot, but the forehand was feeling all right, and it feels like something fun to try. So the key will be not throwing it directly into the dirt since it's a forehand on Annie, but not bad, a little short, but a decent line. And I'm gonna do, with the Wrath, or the Defy, sorry, I'm gonna try a low driving flex on Annie backhand. This is similar to the Photon flight, so we get kind of both, the idea of both shots. That's a lot better. Come out, hit it. Whew, just short. All right. Now we've got the Defy, the Wrath. God, I knew I'd screwed up. The Wrath. Doesn't help that I got them in like similar colors too. All right, so this guy, I really liked that backhand low flex. Kind of want to try a higher flex over the top, just for grins and giggles. We'll try that, the Wrath. We're gonna go sort of a big flex over the top. Should have enough stability to come out and get back towards the basket. Now drop. Huh. Didn't hold the flex as long as I'd like, so it came up a little short left, be a long circle two bid. The Tesla. I think we're going to try again with the low backhand flex shot. That one has been the best so far of the sort of semi-overstable discs, so we'll try it again with the Tesla. Oh yeah, that's just nice. Settle right into the basket. That's the shot, man. At least for a guy that can't throw forehands for crap. All right, now we got the Trace. So with the Trace, I'm tempted to go up along the hyzer route now. I don't think it'll flip up at all though, so I don't think I'll get enough distance. So this one might be another one of the high flex on maybe a steeper ante. There we go. That one held a little bit longer. That should be good. Get down there. Oh yeah, nice little circle one bid. The Zenith has been super nice today, backhand and forehand. I'm gonna try forehand again because it feels so nice in the forehand. I'm gonna try to throw it just flat and straight and see if it turns at all or enough to at least get to the left side of the basket. I don't know if I can get it there, but man, that's nice. At least for my crappy hand is. That was very short, but it made it through the gap with decent height. I was actually pretty impressed by that. The Vanish. I'm gonna try this as just a low driving backhand flat. So in a situation where we've got a low ceiling, if you imagine that gap wasn't up there between the trees, and if there was more stuff to the left and right, just throwing a really high speed driver low and fast, sometimes a great shot. A little too low. If the grass was shorter, that might have skipped up there. Oh, what else we got? The Inertia. This one does, this is where you start getting to the point where it might flip. I think I'm going to throw this guy up along the right side and see. Nah, I'll wait for the more understable stuff. This guy, we're just going to throw it right down the middle with decent power and see if it'll turn and fade back. Yeah, I like it. A little short, but I love the line. The Lift, same shot. I just want to throw it straight and low through this low ceiling. Just see if I can settle it up there. I like throwing these drivers here because they don't have to throw them nearly as hard as I was throwing my fairways last time. Too right. Unfortunate. All right, I've got a wave. This guy we know flips up. This one I'm going to try throwing along the right side on a hyzer. See if I can get to stand up and float back towards the basket. Might be a bit much for me. We'll see. All right, we got it out right. I don't think it's coming back enough though. Oh, it skipped back out. Just on the right side, probably edge of circle putt. Try the same thing with the Jet. I'll try to cut it a little bit closer on the inside. Come on back. Yeah, I think we need a helping wind from the right. Now it looked like it got caught up in the garden a little bit. If I had a little more power or a little bit better wind, that might be a better play. All right, I'm going to throw the Insanity. And I'm going to throw it kind of a little bit higher. But because this is so flippy, I'm hoping it'll kind of drift right through the gap and then back left if I throw it on sort of a medium power. Took a little bit too much off of that one. Hit the tree. I'll try the exact same shot with the Virus. Put a little bit more oomph behind it. Oh, and then I put it in the tree. That's unfortunate. All right. Not the best showing this round here. Got the Orbital left and the Impulse. The Impulse, don't think it's quite roller ready like the Signal was. It's pretty close though. But I think I'm going to throw a hyzer flip along, the left side and see if I can get it to stand up and come back. A little too high, a little too little power. I think I'm running out of gas here for today. All right, Orbital, similar line, maybe not so much hyzer, a little bit more power. That's a little better. I have a little bit more power and it would have flipped, I think. Huh. All right, well, if anything, it's a good example of how fairway drivers are very good for me to shape lines with. I'm not doing quite so good with these control drivers, but again, that's probably not what they're there for, right? They're for hitting spots wide open in the fairway. Try to get good distance with okay accuracy versus good accuracy with okay distance. So there we have it. I'll go grab those and get you my final thoughts. All right, guys, thanks for sticking with me to the end there. I'm tired. Hopefully it didn't show too badly in the last couple rounds of throwing there. But let's go through these discs and I'll give you my thoughts here. We'll start where we did before with the phase. Honestly, I'm just going to talk about these guys together. All these super overstable ones. Like I said before, you can pick any one of these between the phase, the fireball, the flare, and the motion. They're all very overstable utility discs in my opinion, at least for my arm speed. I think if you're looking for the most overstable, you're going to want the flare or the phase. Depending on which one feels better in your hand or what price point you want, the flare is going to be cheaper since it's Streamline. Both good. Fireball and motion seem pretty similar. The fireball, I maybe give the edge to in overstability, maybe slightly, but the motion definitely felt like it had more glide and like a slower fade. So there's slightly different flight paths. I do know the fireball comes in a whole lot more plastics than you'll ever find the motion in, I think. So this tends to be the more popular one out there. I don't know. I throw a fireball. I probably wouldn't switch at this point, but they're probably mostly indistinguishable. All right, let's talk. Oh, so you get the name right. The Wrath. Tesla and the Wrath seem like the same disc to me. Again, whether you like colored rims or black rims is pretty much what it feels like it comes down to. They make a whole lot more Teslas and a whole lot more plastics than they do Wraths. So if that's important to you, if you want plasma and fission and all that stuff, here you go. But both very good, very straight with a nice overstable finish at the very end. Great headwind fighters too. Or at least the Tesla is, I'm assuming the Wrath is too. All right, I'm going to throw these guys all kinds of, well, I'm going to throw these three together at least. The Trace, the Photon, and the Defy. All flew very similar. They all say they have turned. None of them really turned. The Trace is the cheapest. The Photon is, again, the most popular one that's going to come in the most plastics. The Defy has, fun colored rims. I think all three are great. If you want like a straight, slightly overstable driver, this is a solid choice. Those are all supposedly on par with the Wrath from Innova. FYI, if that helps anybody. All right, the Zenith. This one stood out, and this one kind of stood on its own. It was in that same grouping as the other three originally when I was, kind of playing with them, but it really feels like its own disc. It's more understable in all three of them. Also has less of a finish. It's just a very nice, controllable 11 speed. It was the most delightful thing to throw both forehand and backhand. So this is the winner of the day for me. This Zenith, at least in this category, great disc. I would highly recommend it. If I didn't have a bunch of fission photons that also flew like this, I probably would switch to the Zenith because the neutron plastic's cheaper. So eventually, maybe that's where I'll end up. Great disc. Kind of, I see why James doesn't throw it, really, even though it's his signature disc, because it's not quite as overstable, but it doesn't get nearly as much credit as it should, I don't think. All right, let's see. The Vanish and the Lift I want to talk about together. They're clearly not the same discs, one being 11, one being 9 speed, but they flew very similar. Both way more overstable than the numbers indicated. This one bombed, absolutely bombed. This one had a lot of glide. They didn't go quite as far as this one, but I really like both of these. These are the other two surprises. I could bag either one of these and may end up bagging one of them for those long, a little bit straighter than my Photons shot, because these would fade less than the Zenith, I think, and they have a bit more turn. So they're just a little bit straighter, something I can throw a little bit softer if I need to. I really like both of these. Vanish and Lift, great discs. This one will be cheaper. The Vanish, I don't know how many different plastics they make this in. I assume a good number. It competes with the Wave, and the Wave comes in everything, so it's probably not as prevalent out there, but I really liked it, at least this one. So great discs. We'll talk Wave and Jet next. These guys, this one too flippy. This one also too flippy. The only reason I would bag these now is for sort of specialty slow-powered, low-ceiling shots, or tailwinds, or high turnovers, or kind of not necessarily utility, but you wouldn't use it a ton. It wouldn't be my go-to driver. A lot of low arm speed players love these for distance discs, and I can see why. If you don't have a ton of power, they will get you a big full S flight. Even with my power, they turn, but they flattened out, so they just end up a lot further right for me. So great discs. I do bag the Jet. I don't use the neutron one very often, but the proton one I use all the time. So I do bag them both though. Good discs. The Inertia, it was fine. It reminded me of, honestly, the servo a bit, where it was, I don't know, just a little turn, decent fit. It is probably the most true to the numbers, the -2.2. It was one that actually flew the way it was supposed to. It just wasn't all that interesting for me. It feels great though. It's a great option if you're looking at something that's not quite as overstable as that Lift, but not quite as understable as the Virus or the Insanity. Maybe if you really want something in between. Maybe it's not super popular for that reason, in the same way that the servo isn't super popular, because there's something more and less understable around it that are just that much better, in my opinion. So I don't know. Inertia, it's fine. I would probably not bag it, but it flies like it's supposed to. All right, the Virus and the Insanity, these kind of felt like they were in the same category. Both very understable. I wouldn't bag either of these anymore, really. The Insanities I bagged in the past were much more overstable than this one was. They're a lot closer to the Lift. So for sure I wouldn't bag this one, except as some sort of understable utility thing. Virus, I guess if I threw rollers, I'd maybe pick one of these up, or stick with the Insanity. I don't really throw them though, so it's not a thing I'll probably bag, but a nice understable 9-speed if you're looking for one. And the last two discs here, Impulse and the Orbital, too flippy. I don't know. I don't really know what I would use these for, other than really early turning rollers or something, which, as I just said, I don't really throw them, so I'm not going to bag a specific roller disc probably. But if you're really new and just getting into the sport and looking for some good distance drivers to start out with, because you don't like the feel of the mids or whatever, these two are great. The Impulse and the Orbital, depending on if you like the 9-speed or the 11-speed feel. Both good, fairly understable discs. I think the Impulse is a bit more understable than the Orbital. So yeah, that could be the discs that you're looking for. That's it. That's the control drivers. All we have left are the distance drivers, most of which I haven't thrown because I don't throw anything faster than 11-speed usually. So it'll be very interesting to see, A, how those fly, and B, if I can even get them to fly like they're supposed to. Do I have the arm speed? Yeah, I guess thanks for sticking with me to the end here. If you have any comments or questions about the, well, either the whole series or the control drivers, feel free to drop them below. Throw a like if you enjoyed this. Subscribe if you want to catch the rest of the series. After this series is done, I'm going to start doing some other comparison videos where I take some of the big name discs from other brands and try to compare them to their MVP sort of counterparts. So yeah, you can feel free to subscribe if you want to catch those. Otherwise, I appreciate you being here, and we'll catch you in the next one.